Hello. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for joining us for this panel this evening. My name is Adriana Gaviria. My pronouns are she, her, ella, and I'm streaming in from the lands of the Lenape. This panel is going to go on for 90 minutes, and we're going to do some intros in the beginning. Then we're going to have a conversation about music and art. And then towards the end of the panel, we're going to give an opportunity for everyone that's watching, not only here on the platform, but also this is streaming on HowlRound and also on Facebook. So if anyone has any questions, there'll be a chance towards the end, and I will do my best to read them out, and we'll have everybody here in this wonderful group answer them. So let's go around and do some intros. Milton, do you want to go first?
Thank you, Adriana. Muchas bendiciones. Hi, my name is Milton Carrero. My pronouns are he, his. I am the writer of the musical Calle de la Resistencia. I wrote the book and most of the songs in that play. And I am so thrilled to be here as part of Reencuentro. I've been nourishing my heart with every one of these plays, and I look forward to this conversation today.
Thank you so much. Oliver?
Hi, everybody. Oliver Mayer, pronouns he, his, him. I'm thrilled to be talking about music and plays. It's like the thing I just do when I kind of am dreaming and wake up in the morning. So to be able to talk about it with everybody is very exciting. Encuentros, have meant so much to the city of LA. I'm here in LA, and the Reencuentro means more than ever after what we've all been through. And I think the word of the day is resilience. I wish you all that.
I love that. Thank you so much. Evelina?
Hello, beautiful people. I'm Evelina Fernandez, she, her, ella, calling in from the land of the Tongva peoples. I work with the Latino Theater Company, and we're the hosts of this encuentro, and just really happy to be here. And it's been amazing meeting and greeting and experiencing everybody virtually. And hopefully at the next encuentro, we'll be able to embrace each other in person and do this again. But thank you for having me, and thank you for all of you for participating.
Thank you. And Rosalba?
Hi, hello, hi. Not sure you can hear me okay. I'm having some items or issues here, but can you hear me okay?
Yes, you're coming clear. Rosalba, can you hear me? I feel like I've spent the entire year and a half saying that. Can you hear
me? Sad.
Oh no. Well, Javi and Ivan, if you can help Rosalba with her technical issues. Rosalba's having some internet connectivity issues, so we're gonna, she'll just jump into the conversation as we continue. We also have two ASL interpreters who have been wonderful throughout this whole reencuentro, and you will see them switching off every so often. So thank you so much to the interpreters. Rosalba, can you hear me now?
Yes, and I apologize. Of course, just before we began, we received an alarm in our neighborhood that we had Wi-Fi problems. I'm working out of my hotspot in my phone. But thank you, Adriana. Thank you, Evelina. Thank you, LATC. Thank you, Encuentro. This is an amazing opportunity for us to share a table, and I'm so happy. Thank you all.
Awesome. So let's.
I'm with Pregones Theater here in the land of the Lenape, and pronounce she, her, ella.
Thank you so much. So let's jump right into the conversation, music and art. I do want to say that I can't see the questions in the chat, so they're going to be going up on screen, and that's how I'll be able to see comments. stuff like that. But don't let that, just you can start communicating at any time. Definitely, because we want your input as we have this conversation. So let's go around. Evelina, I loved the show earlier
Oh,
this
thank
week.
you.
It was wonderful. Your Boulevard. I also listened to a lot of the things that you all talked about in your conversation. How was that cumbia that I heard in?
No, well, yeah. Sal sings a cumbia. The song that Sal sings in the show is a cumbia.
Oh, okay.
But the kind of music we use in the play is danzón. So that's kind of how we do it. When we're going to do a play, like one of the first things we talk about is what kind of music are we going to use in this play. So, for example, in Solitude, we used mambo, and in Premeditation, we used tango, and so for Whittier Boulevard, we were trying to use like oldies, like Chicano oldies, but somehow it was hard for us to fit that in. So then we settled on danzón. And so it's a very modern kind of danzón because it's original compositions. But so yeah, we decided on danzón. So that's what you hear. And all the movement is kind of to this danzón-ish kind of music. Yeah.
And that was a conversation that you all had as a group, right?
Yeah. Usually it starts with Jose Luis and I, right? And then we take it to the group and say, what do you guys think? Kind of thing. And then what's really important is taking it to Yerbani, right? Because Yerbani's our choreographer and our movement person. So she's the person that has to figure out, how we're going to fit in the music with the movement, the compositions that we're going to see, what are the images that are going to be created with that music. And so it starts with Jose Luis and I. Well, not in this case, because I'm not the playwright. We wrote this one collectively, but usually it starts with Jose Luis and I and Yerbani. In this case, it started with Jose Luis, the group, and Yerbani.
Wow, thank you. Oliver, I really loved hearing about, I saw a video of yours online. You're like, what video?
Why is it online?
Where you talked about how music is really important to you, and that you use it in your writing process. And I loved how you talked about how it just, I think you used the phrase like a can opener. So can you talk a little bit about what music does for you in your writing process and why you love to use it?
Sure. Yeah, definitely a can opener. I don't know if it's a can full of snakes or olives or salson or whatever is going to come out of it. It's going to be a surprise sometimes. I think that music is certainly what I dream. And when I wake up in the morning, I like to hear it, whatever I happen to be digging on at any point, and I drive with it and I live with it, and it's in my head, particularly when times are tough. So yeah, it's funny. I've lived a life in the theater, but in my dreams, I'm a musician. And maybe before I was even, definitely before I was a playwright, I was studying like opera. And so I still have that inside of me. It was so much fun and so difficult. So for me, it's the ultimate. I was searching for a quote today, and I actually found it about 15 minutes before we went online. It's Rachmaninoff. It says, music is enough for a lifetime, but a lifetime is not enough for music. And I feel that that's kind of right, that the music is always there, and the music actually does all these things that we strive to do already. And that all we're really trying to do is connect to those feelings and memories and images, which probably connect us way past our own lives, maybe to our ancestors, not maybe, definitely, I think, to our DNA. And so it's a can opener to again, a can that perhaps has been buried in the ground for a long time. I hope it's still edible, but I do know in a lot of ways that it wouldn't have been opened otherwise. And it's funny about music too, that it's sometimes music that we think we know. I don't know, Hey Jude or something, like we've heard many, many times. But there's this thing when it happens at the moment that you need it. I don't know, it's worth more than the sum of its parts. It actually is on time for you, and it is more than enough. So that's what I meant in that comment that you saw, and it's kind of the way I live every day when I write my plays and everything else.
Thank you, Oliver. I love that quote. Milton, what is your background as far as music goes? Is that something that has always been around, in your family? Is that something that you grew up with? Can you talk a little bit about that?
It's in my soul, and I had to awaken it over time. I am a journalist by training. I have a master's degree in journalism, and I worked for like 7 or 8 newspapers while still writing songs. So I started to write songs and to write stories for newspapers at the same time when I was 17 years old. And it, like, I was listening to Vanessa, one of the actors in the previous piece, talk about music being this visceral thing that happens to you, and I think that that has been the case. I identify a lot with Oliver, that I've been chasing music my whole life, and that one life is not enough for it, but it's enough. One life is enough to write a few songs, and that's all I ever wanted to do. I I think that my father is the person I credit the most, I think, for the creativity, even though he's not a musician at all. He taught me how to make melodies out of everything that happens around you. So so you come in the morning and you say, "Hey, we're running late. Let's have some breakfast." And he'll start a song. "Oh, let's running late. Let's start some breakfast." And anything that he would come up to his mind, he would create a melody with it. And to me, that was magic. That was the beginning of my curiosity. And with the blending of storytelling, I thought that it fulfills my soul. I can tell you a lot more, but I want to hear Rosalba. I want to hear more, but basically is my eternal longing, my companion. It is who where I go when I truly need solace.
Thank you. Rosalba, all the work that I've seen at Pregones PRTT is always so infused with music, and I'm always moved by everything that I see. When you started We Have Ire, and you started a conversation with Paul and this project, when did music come into the conversation? How did that evolve as this project evolved? Oh no, let's see. Let me just check and see if she can hear me.
Oh, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes, yes.
I'm sorry you're coming and going, but I'll, if not, I'll just change to my iPad. But I'm so sorry. Trying to survive connectivity issues here, but thank you. I guess we're talking about all, about our background in music or whatever that means for for all of us. That I think that we are in general musical people. Our Latinx community in general, very musical people. Music has played a big role since I was a little child, because dance and music came before theater, in my case, and so I studied music for years, but the whole role of music, and not only music, music and sound in the context of theater, to me have been very, very basic way of making theater from the moment I co-founded the company. I co-founded Pregones Theater 40 years ago. It was, we knew we wanted music. We didn't know exactly how we were going to approach it. And it was, in fact, the amazing writer, Emilio Carballido, who came to see one of our early rehearsals. And we had recorded music. And he said, "How dare you use recorded music when you guys You all can make music out of a trash can. You can do anything. Dunk on the door and make a sound of a clave. And I'm thinking, okay, maestro, okay. And then we, of course, had heard all kinds of things about musicians and how difficult they are, how we can work with them. And then I said, we're going to make this work. We're going to learn to work with musicians and vice versa. And it's been a glorious 40-year journey working with the most amazing musicians and collaborators. And this is why I'm so happy that we are having composers in this conversation, because a musician that works in theater is a very special kind of musician. In addition to the work that she or he does outside of theater, this is not something that just any musician can do.
Yes. Great, thank you. We're switching ASL interpreters. Thank you so much. Great. And as far as music, is there any particular style of music that fills you, right? That opens you up more, that nourishes you the most, Milton?
It depends on the situation and what I am longing for, what I'm trying to express or feel. I like to look for the roots always. I feel like in any drum beat, in any ensemble, you need a very steady drum beat and a good bass line and all of these things. So I like to go back to the people that molded my culture, going back from Danny Rivera to the roots of plena and bomba, and seeing how that evolves into salsa, and then it's reggae, and then world music with all its fusions. It's a conversation. So I see music as and styles as a lot of different beaches. I could go into jazz on a day, that I feel like surfing. I could go into reggae or I could go into classical music, or I could go into meditative sounds if that's what I need, because I see music as the ocean, and all of us can visit different beaches, and those are home for us. And then we venture into that ocean of the unknown, and it all blends together. So, since we are emotional people, we sometimes I try to counter what I'm feeling with something complementary. If I'm feeling down, I try to go up. If I am feeling like I am not getting a hold of everything that is happening, I can go deep into the flamenco, Camarón de la Isla. I just look for something that has soul, that will move me to create something I don't know what that will be. And I love that surprise.
That's awesome. Evelina, do you have any particular style of music that moves you?
Well, I write, or we, the Latino Theater Company, we do our plays for a very specific audience, and our audience is the Chicano Mexicano audience of Los Angeles, right? So within that audience, there's first, second, third, fourth, new immigrants, right? All within, there's that huge diversity within that audience. And so we know that our audience, they like to laugh, they like to cry, and they love music, right? So that's kind of like the formula we use every time we do our plays. And I grew up very poor, and but we always had music. We always had music in our house. So my parents were dancing cha-cha-cha and mambo, and listening to Edie Gourmet and Three Los Panchos. And, and then my sisters were listening to 50s soul music. And then I grew up listening to Motown, right? And the Beatles. And so being a Mexican American brings in all those things. And then when I got involved in the Chicano movement, and I, became familiar with movimiento songs, by Daniel Valdez and Los Alacranes Mojados and all of the movimiento songs. And then I went to Cuba and discovered Silvio Rodriguez. It goes on and on, and then the nueva canción de Violeta Parra and Victor Jara and Inti Limani, Quilapayún, all of those people. And so all of that music is part of who I am as a playwright. And so all of that music takes up space in my work, right? So for example, in The Mother of Henry, it's protest music. It's American protest music, and it's Latinx protest music too, but it's protest music. So yeah, my all that music speaks to me, all of it, not just one, it all does, right?
Yes. And in the mother of Henry, all that music was so well known, but it was never it was never seen, right?
It was never sung by La Virgen de Guadalupe.
It's funny.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Oliver, as an educator, is there any specific genres of music or composers or musicians that you give your students advice on to listen to and during the process? Or
so funny you asked that. Just even a week ago, I just did it. I didn't plan to do it, but it was one of the best classes with my grads. I brought in Diaz y Flores of Silvio, and we looked at that whole the litany of the La Rabia, and no one had ever heard it before, and made me feel very old, but also made me feel very good because I could present something so extraordinary, and their minds just blew. And then because they had never heard him, and I had a little video to play. It's about the extent of my tech knowledge, by the way, too. But I was able to show them a little Silvio, and then they all went off and wrote. And I'll hear whatever they have written on Monday. I'm looking forward to it. So yeah, I do think that it's essential for us as artists to share what we love and to share what we know. Completely, of course, Evelina and I, have been on the planet and here in LA for a long time together, and so I completely, I love the work that Evelina does with her plays and the LTC does. But I gotta say, Milton, I think I found my soul brother, because we talked about the I feel like music is an ocean of stories.
Yeah.
And that we then have to dive in. And it's a little bit like dark water, deep water. And the important thing, what happens when we dive in, maybe unlike the Pacific or the Atlantic, is that we grow gills. We grow gills, and we can actually breathe underwater when we're listening to the really, really good music. So for me, I'm like deeply, deeply a Lorca guy. I'm into the duende. I like music that's got duende. And for me, the duende occurs, I don't like perfection. I like humanity. So I love like doo-wop on the street corner, and I like people who really take chances. And so when I put music on stage, I'm always asking my actors, take a chance, hit that high note, do something wild. And they get mad at me, but I know it's for the best for everyone.
Yeah.
I love that you mentioned the duende. And for those who are familiar with flamenco music, and yes, Garcia Lorca is such but it's any artist, I think, is really chasing that feeling of connecting with their divinity, with the power of inspiration, and so it comes from that moment of extreme concentration and intimacy and abandon, even, right? You release to something greater, which is the music, and we become the instruments. And I think that when I feel and hear all of these plays, I feel a kinship, because from that vulnerability and that intimacy, I think Jose Luis and Evelina had mentioned that they started writing monologues, and that was kind of their cathartic. experience, and from there came inspiration. I think Jesus and Elisa both mentioned about poetry being the springboard for their whole pieces. And I think that poetry has been my entrance into music too. Like, if I ever experienced the duende, it came early with a pen and a paper on a corner of my house, perhaps because I was misbehaving and I had to, stay on the side and reflect a little. And after crying and everything, I would put my pen to paper, and then I would write in stream of consciousness. I was very young, and then words that I didn't know the meaning to consciously were, they sounded good to be placed there. So I would place them there, following my intuition, my inspiration, and then I would look them up in the dictionary, and they actually make sense. So I would learn words too that way. And a similar approach I took to music, and I think definitely Silvio Rodriguez, Roy Brown, Antonio Cabalbal, El Topo, Fiera La Vega, all of these troubadours really are the reason why Calle Resistencia exists today, because I so look up to their style, to the way of expressing. I think that I was breastfed with Joan Manuel Serrat, and all of that. I think that is very key. The music that we listen to in our infancy, those first 5-7 years, what our parents play for us, even if we rebel against it later on in life, it seems to me that we will always return to it, because that's where our identity truly lies. When you go, like I grew up with all salsa, Willie Colon, La Fania, all of that. My father loved it, right? And then I wanted to absorb all of the other influences, right? And then later on in life, just with the admiration to my father and what they have given me, came my need to learn those bass lines and to learn how that how that worked, how much fusion was happening in a salsa song, in that montuno and in those horns. And I think that it's very important what our parents give us during the first years of our life. That will be, I think, our source to come back to all the time. Even if we're not aware of it, it'll be there.
Thank you, Milton. Rosalba, I just wanted to make sure that you can hear me.
I can hear you.
Okay,
Can you hear
great.
me?
Yes.
I'm so sorry about this.
No, not at all.
What a great conversation. Yes, go ahead, Adriana.
No, such wonderful thoughts, right, and comments from Oliver and Milton and Evelina, and so Rosalba, I wanted to ask you, in your not only with We Have Ire, but also in the work that you do, when does music come in, right? How does that because you work with, like Evelina and her company, they work together. You also have a group that works together, so you've learned from each other through the years. Where does the music start? What comes first for you in your group?
It's a toss up, it is sometimes a play is born out of a love for a particular musical moment that inspires us to do something. Sometimes we begin the work and that moment brings in the music. We have an ensemble of musicians and actors. We have resident musicians, we have composers, we have our musical directors that have been with us now, between the different relays since the beginning. So it is very much a part of it. We can't think non-musically when it comes to theater, even though we have some pieces very few that do not have live music, but then they have other kinds of sound environments that we build into it. We, as much as we all want to think, I was taught that music is a universal language. I have come to realize that it's not. That we have to, we fall in love with different kinds of music, that we have to, when we're working together with other musicians from other cultures, that we need to negotiate our ground together and create these theater pieces with music from different parts of the world when we're doing that. And that's what I love about the process. This can you hear me okay? I hope. um, so, for example, this year we're celebrating 27 years of working together with Appalachian artists in Whitesburg, Kentucky, for example, part of the Roadside Theater collaboration. Well, I never thought I could really deeply fall in love with Appalachian music and understand uh, bluegrass to the point that I have. And when we work with Jumbo Productions in New Orleans and African American, soul music and at the base of that music. But we had to sit down and negotiate it through. We had to understand what we were doing. Really, the heartbeat of each one of us was different, was not the same. And then eventually we merged and it was beautiful. So we have learned to be patient. And I love all kinds of music. I love rock. I love the Mamas and the Papas. I love everything. I mean, I love music, and it inspires me to do things. Right now, we're working on a project that is a partnership between our musicians. Tim Rice, who is the leading saxophone player for the Rolling Stones, and some friends in Rotterdam, in Holland. So all of this together in one room. That the idea, putting together 7 musicians from each a different part of the world, to put together something, and it will be highly theatrical as well as musical. So that's what we do. What we're doing now, touched about the Bronx fires of 1970s, is such a rich moment of hip hop and everything. But it was more than that. It was just a whole configuration of the musical genres of the time. So we do have rock, and we do have the hip hop, and we do have all that. But to me, we learned a lot from that Brechtian movement. It's not about doing the kind of production that is aspires to be, or it is like Broadway. Like, these are different tracks, and I'm not at all opposed or criticize Broadway in any way, but I'm saying that we have different theatrical tracks on how our musicians and our actors need to connect to music, and the respect that we need to have for each other once we are rehearsing together. The other day, I was marveling at how our 4 musicians just stood there waiting for a monologue to end, and they're disciplined. And the moment they had to just, at the end of that monologue, just do a little sound, they waited 10 minutes for that one sound that took us to a different level. And then the actors stood back and the musicians took over. And it is that kind of dialogue on the stage that I love to work on all the time.
And I have witnessed that so many times. I'm going into the theater, Rosalba, on your projects, and I see that dialogue constantly, live between both of them, and I love that about your group and your ensemble.
Thank you.
Oliver, is there? I mean, I doubt there is, because you seem to know so much about music. But is there any genre of music that you have not explored yet and that you would like to?
It's funny because I can now talk a little bit about something that I'm doing with Latino Theater Company. I'm lucky enough to be one of the imaginistas, the commission writers who are working on new pieces. A lot of really great people. And when we all met the first time, it was fabulous because company members presented ideas for us. And some of us are early in our career and some of us are later in our career. Anyway, there were a lot of presentations. And then we were supposed to list the pieces that we wanted to do. And in my mind, I figured out a couple of things. I wrote stuff down. I'm going to do this. I talked to my wife about it. And I had it listed 1, 2, 3. And then I went to bed and I had a dream. And when I woke up, I had thought about the 3rd play and I had to do it. And it was about music, and it was about a musician named Juventino Rosas. And I don't know if anyone knows about him. And I would think maybe a lot of people have never heard his name. But if I were to play the piece of music that he created, which was a waltz of the 19th century, you would all, I think, first off say that's Strauss, or that's, classical, famous, whatever. It was written by an indigenous artist from Mexico City, an itinerant musician who went from bar to bar as a teenager, and then wrote unbelievably beautiful music for about 10 years and was only on the planet for a short time, died in Cuba, actually, at 26 in the 1890s. But the power of his music is something that came to me kind of in a dream and completely knocked over the other ideas I had. And when it came time to write the piece, Evelina can tell you, I had a draft. I'm not saying it's any good, but I had a draft in like 5 weeks. It was like, blah, I just did it. And it was because the music was driving me. And as it was driving me, I was using my life, my interest, and I had decided, well, he needs to meet some people. And I had him meeting, for one instance, Posada in Mexico, the great artist. But then I was getting cheeky, and I'm like, well, he was in New Orleans at one point, and so I had him like kind of finding the blues, a little bit, and then going to Chicago and meeting Scott Joplin, and then like moving from place to place and meeting these amazing people. Even Jose Marti shows up in the play. And because again, when you're, I think, a great musician, you're like magnetic, and people come to you, and the stories go right through you. And so this piece that I created is going to hopefully bring his music to light again, and also remind us we already know who he is. We just didn't know that he's the guy who did it. And we attributed it, maybe I'm just talking for myself, but I don't think so, to some European, some guy, who's already in record books and everything, when it was actually one of us. It was actually one of us from our continent with our DNA. And, he was as good or better than anybody.
Wow. And when is that happening? Next
I don't
year?
know when is that. We're going to get Jose Luis over. We'll figure it out. We're going to do some readings. We're doing readings in the spring.
We're going to do readings in the spring. Readings in the spring of
everything's happening. Everything's coming. But the piece, in a lot of ways, will show. I don't think I've ever particularly worked on this kind of music. I don't know what you say. 19th century, the waltz. I don't know, mazurkas, things like this. And it feels like really old and everything, but I don't think it is. It feels just like, I don't know, people are just conversing with music.
Yeah.
Milton, were you going to say something? Were you going to?
No, I mean, that, of course, one of our own can play as good as anyone, because music is a real... It's the first place where black and whites could jam and groove. It's not about DNA only. It's about something beyond that, right?
The human spirit.
Right. That music reincarnates in us over and over and over and over again. We think we are so unique, but music winks at us.
Sure.
In the last year and a half that we've all done a lot of work virtually, do you think that this music, right, or the role of the sound engineer has become more noticeable, for us, since we've been viewing this all on the screens? I feel like in the theater, right, it's like, okay, if you don't notice the design, or if you don't notice that, then it was done well, type of thing. But I feel like maybe with all the virtual projects that we've been doing, we're having like this new appreciation for all the different elements in the production. How has music and sound driven your narrative forward, at least in this last year and a half, with all these virtual projects?
Well, I feel like you would need to, Wayne and Ivan, our tech staff at the theater, Wayne and Ivan, our designer, John Zalewski, all of these people, all of a sudden, with this pandemic, had to adjust and figure out how to, make the sound work virtually. And I mean, they did it for all of the archival videos that we streamed. It's not like we could just take the video and go, okay, put it out there. No, they had to clean up all the sound and all the music and everything. And so yeah, and we had to learn to be patient for that process, for them to do their work, because it was just very different from being in the theater. And they were on a learning curve too. I mean, it's not like running sound in the theater. It's like, running sound, well, going back and cleaning something up so you can put it up there, So, yeah, I mean, not me, but like I'm saying, I say we, but the guys, the people that are doing the work are really our tech staff, and our designers, our sound designers, who are making it sound as good as it can. It's still very different. It's not like you're hearing live music. It's not like listening to a live band. It's very different. Yes, best tech team ever.
Yeah. But patience, Evelina, thank you for mentioning patience. Because I think that we in theater tend to be impatient with musicians and in general, or tech people. And I remember, I learned something a few years ago when I was getting impatient. And I said, but we need this. And our amazing sound engineer said to me, Rosalba, but I'm rehearsing too. So just as we were rehearsing on stage, she was rehearsing the sound, the cues, everything. And I said, I'm so sorry. And I'm still apologizing. He laughs because I've been apologizing for 12 years that he's been with us. Apologizing for 12 years to our sound designer, amazing. And he said, I always tell that story because it was a learning experience, that that technical personnel needs as much patience and collaboration from us as we need from them.
Yeah, we did a podcast, and we didn't know what we were doing, but we did a podcast of premeditation, and it took, I mean, our press person, had the date, and then we're like, no, don't put out the press release yet. And then we changed it again. No, it's not ready yet. Because I mean, we were done, the actors were done, but all the sound, it was the sound and the music that had to be put in, and everything. It was, we pushed the date, I think, around 3 times before that podcast was ready. And that was all because just a new way of doing it.
And for someone who's maybe watching, a writer who's never incorporated music into their work and is excited about the idea, but a little bit fearful, or kind of doesn't know how to move forward with that, what kind of collaborators are important to have on your team? So, like, for example, I worked on a motherhood concert for the first time ever, and I learned all these different parts that are involved in writing the song, and then there's like the lyricist, the composer, the arranger, and all these different teams that I'd never worked with before, and I never knew were part of the process. But when you're just starting out and you're writing, and you want to have a good collaborator, Rosalba, who is it that you should look for if you want to start incorporating music into your work?
Well, I always say it doesn't matter. You can be the most talented person in the world, but if you do not know how to collaborate, it will just not work. So you want to have someone working with you that's a true collaborator. Too often, I tell my actors when we get together, and especially that if we bring one new actor in, I always warn them: the musicians is not a jukebox. that composer is not an automatic, and they'll jump in with a new note. It's a collaboration. So it has to be a process in which we will both collaborate. Someone who's wanting to bring in a musician into the process, I suggest bring that person as early as possible into the process, into your own thinking, even before final commitment. You want to know that your hearts are communicating in the best possible way.
Oliver, how about you? Who would you say?
It's such a good question. Yeah, I think you want to bring in the people you love, and you sometimes don't know you love them until you, until you find out when you're in the room together. Um, I've had the best experiences probably in the theater outside of meeting my wife, meeting musicians and then working together on plays. And I've written a couple of opera. I've written some cabaret. I've written I don't write American musicals per se, but you know I do use musicians a lot in my plays, and you know sometimes it's just it almost feels like a shot in the dark. Um, I saw Maceo Hernandez from East LA Taiko on a documentary once. I hadn't even met him yet. And I just reached out to him and I said, hey, man, can we work on something? And we worked on Blade to the Heat at the Marte Forum. This is many years ago, but it was transformative. And I'm bringing him back to USC in January to welcome back our students. And it's East LA Taiko does the traditional Taiko drums, but with kind of East LA beats. And then they're going to work on a new piece, and we just work now. So it was a kind of shot in the dark, except it wasn't. So the artists out there need to take their shots, and whether it feels like it's in the dark or not, sometimes you got to be bold, and you got to kind of go where your heart is taking you. If you're open-hearted and minded enough, I think you're going to go in the right direction.
Milton?
Oh, I like what Rosalba said a lot about making sure your hearts are communicating. And that seems so intangible in many ways, right? But when it's actually happening, you know. And also, I think that it's important that your standards, work ethic, and that person's work standards and ethics of work are the same. And if you can find a passion, something that you both care about, even if you come about from different perspectives, I think that is great. I love when you don't necessarily agree, but you both care about it so much that you will come up with the solutions, whatever it takes. I was blessed in Calle Resistencia to work with Ramon Matos and with Juan Matos and Ramon Velarde. Juan Matos is a great arranger and pianist, and he's worked in a variety of films, and even worked in with Amelie and Hamilton. And his training is classic. And then Ramon Velarde he's more of a rock star, I think, in the guitar, and he comes from Mexico, and he thinks with strings. So he thinks with strings, and Juan Matos thinks with the piano. But we had some sensibilities about human dignity, about what it's like to be a Latino, about what should be done and what shouldn't be done. And so those emotions turn into notes and rhythms. But I think that it's also important that if it's your project, if it's something that you have, it's a passion piece, you know, then you have to be as thorough as you can on your side, in terms of what you want to, what you imagine. And it's also great to have common experiences in which I didn't have a chance to do that in this time, but in other collaborations with musicians, actually go through common experiences that might produce music because we're living them together. And then I don't have to convince them, or they don't have to understand your point of view. They can be themselves.
May I say something to that point, Adriana? Thank you so much, Milton, because it's absolutely right. I mean, sometimes, you know, I have collaborated with our musical director and composer Desmar Guevara for more than 20 years, 25 years. And so we read each other's minds, you know, and same with the musicians. But We Have Ire, it was my first time working with Josvani, but we both wanted this, and Paul wanted it. And we also, we were committed. And because I have that so embedded in me, it just flowed so beautifully because we had that common purpose. And there was a moment that you see tonight in the show, a couple of moments, but one of them is particular that I'm always have fun watching because one day Ramon is a dance is a character who goes from his town in Cuba to Havana and for dance school, and he doesn't know that he's going to dance school. He's a young man, and so when I saw that what Ramon was doing, just his movement was the one who told me to run over to Javi at the piano. I said, Javi, could you give me anything? Just see, look at him and just think we can come through. It's just like crazy, but we need something to sustain this moment. And he started with this beautiful Bach, and he just went for. But then this young man began to talk about his vida en el campo. And I ran back to Javi and I said, now it's in the campo, now we have to switch. And he started with this son cubano. And the moment is glorious in my mind and in my heart because it was about the three of us communicating. Ramon was performing. Javi was paying attention to what was happening. I was communicating. And then we were able to present to Giovanni, who's the musical composer for the piece. We said, Giovanni, we wanted to show you something. Hopefully you will like it. And he loved it and he enriched it. Because it spoke to him. So it's about sometimes you don't plan it. Sometimes it just happens. With Esmar, yes, Jose Luis Esmar is the best. I mean, we look at each other. It's like, are you thinking what I'm thinking? Are you seeing what I'm saying? And that's when the magic happens, I think.
There was one time many years ago, I saw this woman singing, and she was fierce, right? She had a shaved head, and she played, and her partner was playing like rock guitar, and she was singing in Spanish. And I just looked at her and I just thought she was so amazing. And I was just like, I need to work with her. We need to put her in a play. We just, it was just that feeling that I knew I felt connected and I felt afraid, right? I was so afraid of approaching her because she was such a powerful woman and her aura was huge, right? And so I said to Jose Luis, how can I find her? And I became obsessed with like finding her and trying to find a phone number. And then finally I found a phone number and somebody answered and they're like, who is this? And I was like, oh, like I was so frightened. And then finally, I don't know, it took me, a month or so. I got in touch with her and I talked to her and I said, would you like to, because I was doing an adaptation of Liz Estrada, right? Calling Liz Estrada in the City of Angels. So, and we were going to do it at the Getty Villa workshop. And, and she was the most beautiful, kind, simple, woman who's like very different from the persona I saw on the stage. And it became a beautiful collaboration because I had written songs in the script, and then her and Ricardo Ochoa, who, now I know who he is a big rockero from Mexico, one of the most famous rockeros from Mexico. And we've become lifetime friends, but it was just that feeling that I knew I had to work with this. I had to work with this woman, and it's been beautiful. And they've worked in La Víctima with us too, and hopefully we'll work again together. But that's how it happens. You just see somebody and you admire them, and you just kind of fall in love with them and their work, and then you want to make love with them, on stage, and that's how it happens.
Wow. Milton, have you ever had that experience? Have you ever heard someone play music or sing that you just immediately had that connection with, that you wanted to work with? or is there a particular
Yeah,
yeah?
I wanted to say first, this is not is someone that I've worked with, but when Evelina was describing this singer, I immediately thought of Silvia Perez Cruz, who's a voice that if you haven't discovered her, she has so much passion and is amazing. Uh, I have it happens to me every so often, and it's not very common that I meet like a musical soulmate, in
Mm.
which it's yeah, like Evelina said, it's making love, but it's no sex, but it's better than that. More pure in the sense of what art can be in terms of union and communion. Freddy La Rosa is one is an Ecuadorian singer songwriter that I met several years back, and the moment we met, songs just started pouring out of us, and it was basically because we have very similar uh, influences, and we were living similar experiences that would linger, and we would talk, and songs would come out. But I think it's very common among musicians that musicians sit together to jam, and it's beautiful when you haven't met someone before to go into a rehearsal studio and not talk too much
Mm.
and just grab the instrument and communicate that way, because then some of that spiritual connection that we cannot really name because it's ineffable, but Rosalba was talking about having those hearts in communion, it happens. And then somehow you intuitively feel that person's journey in life. And it might be just in your mind, but it doesn't matter, because corporally, like next to each other, there, there becomes that connection happens, and then later on you're looking at each other, and you know when you're coming in, and you know when a change is happening, and it's and when you see jazz musicians improvising, you know that this telepathy is happening, and it's beyond telepathy. It's something, and where you see dancers on the stage when they're actually in flow. Reason is defied at this moment, because the human mind and heart have other capabilities that we're still not completely ready to acknowledge in humanity. So we think that these are aberrations that happen every so often, but we see it all the time. And I think artists are constantly going into that domain of where silence can communicate and give space for other things to flourish. It's really beautiful to try to put words to this, and I think this is why art happens, because there's an experience that I can touch it, I can almost grab it, but I need a metaphor, you know.
For sure, for sure. Yeah. There was and also what happened to us is one time there was a young man that we saw playing the cello at a concert, and again, you know, we were so taken by him, and Jose Luis is the one that approached him and said, you know, we're going to start workshopping this play. He'd never done theater. He was like, okay, I'll come and check it out, whatever. And he was he was part of the whole process of solitude, right?
Mm.
And we used mambo music and Lara Perez Prado music, and he was in there with the cello, right? He was playing the cello throughout all. I mean, he did like a soundtrack throughout the whole play on the cello, and then there were two beautiful moments. And you know, you think, okay, Chicano theater, and then there's a cellist, right? He's Japanese and Russian, and he's you know he's an amazing cellist, and so he plays a ranchera on the cello, right? Dum, 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 dum. And Sal sings the Mexican ranchera, and it's just a beautiful moment, you know, in the play. And so that's, again, an example of how you don't know, you know, you don't know. You have to be very curious and very, and take chances, like Rosalba said, you know, not every musician, believe me, we've worked with musicians that can't work in the theater, right? They just can't, and, it's not a criticism or anything. It's just like they can't get it. They don't get it. They can't fit into that kind of process, right? Because they're, a different kind of musician. But when you find somebody who is totally open to your creative process and wants to be part of it. I mean, he was dancing, carrying his cello around. We gave his a character name. His name was Cello. That was, another beautiful example of collaborating with a musician.
Can I just say quick that I think what Evelina really, for me, great story, but in a lot of ways, what that person did is connect to the dead. And that's what music does too. It's fantastic to work with the fellow live performers. And of course we will, and we do. But the other thing is to connect to those who came before and those who are not with us right now, those who we have to remember. And music helps us remember. And it seems like that cello was a connection. And that play was all about a connection. And it was a connection. If you knew the people involved, even better. And even if you didn't, you were still connected because we understand what's really going on.
Rosalba, were you going to say something? I know you started saying something, but you were muted. So I wanted to just...
I'm sorry. I'm just agreeing with everyone, and my head is nodding like that because I think it's our common story. But Milton was talking about silence, and I think silence is as much an important music composition for theater as the the writer needs to sometimes just pause and hear the music, and it's about that communication. But I had a great conversation with Desmar today about one of the musical numbers we're developing, and I kept thinking maybe it's just it's a lot of singing throughout, and we need to speak it. And I called myself Desmar. He said, "I know what you're calling me. You want her to speak the text? Is that what you're calling me?" I said, "Yes." I said, "I felt the same thing." So at this point, once you have that relationship, it's like yes, the music will be there, but you need to speak in, and it's having that also opposite effect and dramatic effect, because after all, you're doing theater. And so and in working in compositions, I don't know, when watching Calle de la Resistencia, Milton, and I remember way back in our generation when I remember when we were having the huge protestas for the Navy's presence in Vieques, Puerto Rico, and to take the Navy out of the island. I remember that there was this politician who said, things cannot be that bad. They're all dancing, because the protesta had the instruments and people were dancing and people were protesting through music, and they couldn't were so mad, and we were dancing. So I think that's what I love about the connection of theater and music, that we can dance to anger on stage and deliver a monologue all at the same time.
Yes. I was thinking, I know Melissa, who's one of the artists in Reencuentro, mentioned in one of the conversations about using music, right, through grief as a healing, right? And I was just wondering, for all of you, and I'll start with you, Milton, is there any sound or instrument that just centers you, kind of brings you home? What would you say it would be?
The sound, right? The original sound of vibration, of knowing that my cells vibrate, that the sound of my heart, and my breath. Really, when I need centering, that's music. When it's steady, and when my breath. Um, I go back to trova. I think that I'm a folk singer, and I like to look for folk music, that will make me think, will create stories in my mind, will give me a connection, will give me the ability to cry if I haven't cried in a long time. I find that I find a lot of that in folk music of different kinds that tell stories. They that I that centers me. But I also just like the sounds of nature.
Mm.
Listening to the rain fall in a techo de zinc, listening to the rain, listening to the cookies, listening to the family speaking in the background when it's peaceful.
When it's peaceful.
you know Anything that sparks in my heart some nostalgia for something that I want to include in my present, because everything is in us, and we can evoke what we want to fill our moments with. Music is a good way to shift sometimes from loops in your mind. When you have repetitive thoughts, I change the rhythm. I get up and dance, and I pray with bomba. I pray with music from our indigenous ancestry, from Puerto Rico and Latin America in general. I like to listen to mantras in Sanskrit. I think that in the end, I want my art to remind me of my spirit and to remind others of that. So I continually try to rescue it, because it's easy to get diluted and distracted with so many things at the same time.
Mhm. And how about you, Oliver?
To have a million things to say, but the one that I landed on is Gladys Knight and the Pips, man. I just want to, whenever I hear Gladys Knight, I think, wow, I fell in love with her when I was a little boy, and still, she's my other girl. I'm crazy about her, and yeah, it inspires me. I think so. That comes down to soul. I think the human voice, and in the end, again, I don't really mind. Of course, I want talent and whatever imagination, but I don't mind if it's off key. I'm blessed not to have perfect pitch, and I really just want people to express themselves, and it feels to me that when they do that, then we're sharing.
Rosalba, do you have any?
Preferred instrument? Is that the question? Yeah.
Sound or an instrument that just brings you home, centers you.
It all depends on the environment I'm in at the moment. For example, when I was listening to the Coquis a few months ago in Puerto Rico, that were coming through Milton Sound. I mean, that's home, right? That is DNA, and immediately we react to that. It's so interesting because in Hawaii, I was talking to a friend once, and there are the only place where the Coquis were brought once and survived. And for them, they are noise, and for us, they are sound. And so when I said to the one day, I'm remembering it a little, because this sound, he said, sound, that's noise. I said, okay, so there we go. Different ways of feeling something. But I welcome anything that interrupts the moment in a good way. And right now, for this particular piece we're working on, the bass is just gives us that center, that grounding, as are the drums. Interestingly, they're all Latin percussion, but one of the numbers will use an Irish drum, for example, and it's because of our relationship, right, with our Irish friends from the mountains, and that has become, we have adopted those sounds, and they're part of our being. So it all depends on the moment. I don't really have a preferred sound, but I welcome always, of course, the human voice over anything else. And but sometimes you just have to just shut up and listen to this.
Evelina, do you have anything?
Let it be.
Well, like Oliver, I grew up with Motown, and that is the music that of my youth, soul music, Motown. My kids know. Mom likes funk, play funk. Mom likes funk, and so they know that. But also, I love protesta, and I love protesta music, and I love Mercedes Sosa, and El Pueblo Unido jamás será vencido. It's like those songs when Jose Luis was working at OSF, when he would have a break, we would go for a ride, in the country over there and just turn on all our, just play protesta and sing and sing and sing and sing, and it brought so much joy to us, to just,
Yeah.
sing protesta, sing protesta. I love that. My taste in music is very eclectic, like right now I'm very into John Batiste, and John Batiste has this song called Freedom. And I love that song. And I play it over and over when I'm driving. I play Freedom because I just love that song, right? And also there's a song by Banda MS from Sinaloa that there's a song called Que Maldición with Snoop Dogg, right? So Snoop Dogg plays with this banda MS. It's called Que Maldición, and it's banda and rap. And I love it. And I play that over and over and over too. So my taste is very eclectic, but really Mexican American. That's what I am. It's Chicano identity.
So we are at 7:46. We're going to start taking questions from the chat. So Javi, and whenever you're ready, you can start posting up questions so we can make sure we have time for everyone. This question comes from Daniel. What came first, storytelling or music playing?
Music.
Definitely music.
For me, storytelling drove me to music.
Oral history and storytelling, I think, is just part of growing. I mean, they're two parallel tracks in my mind. The storytelling and oral history is just the way we grow up, the way we learn, and that is sort of, I cannot imagine one without the other, frankly, from the beginning of time. If we think of music also as sound.
Yeah, and personally, that's, my first memory is my mother reading to me because I was a really sick child, spent a lot of time in a hospital. So my first memory is my mom reading to me and telling me stories and listening to music at the same time. So it's like this parallel track that Rosalba's talking about.
Yeah.
What is music anyway but another language? In a certain way, it's a language, and it's better than English, Spanish, German, Esperanto, whatever. I mean, it just, you feel it wherever you're from, if it's any good.
Universal, right? Universal for sure.
Elisa asks, how do you grow a cancionitita into a canción?
Sing it 10 times.
Open it.
Sing it to somebody else.
Opera is a good way to approach it.
I think that every song is a different blessing, right? Because some songs come to you straight up from, but then require, you might have 3 minutes of grace and a bunch of months of work to bring it to where it comes. But I think that if you like it, if you like the melody, if you like that, if you only have the beginning of something that could be like a chorus that stays with you for a while, it will start going inside yourself, picking up things, and before you know it, it will have something for you. Sometimes the beginning of a song is this whole song compressed into that, but then it takes your dedication to apply yourself to unwind that. In the end, all creativity, I think, is improvisation in its at some point in the process. I mean, in order for you to create something, you have to have an idea and improvise upon that, even if it's well structured and everything. So I would say just give yourself the permission to to listen and to do it wrong, because usually it's we being so critical of ourselves that don't allow that cancioncita to become a canción, allow that canción to not be perfect, but it's complete, and then it can be worked on and made a great song.
One of the yes, Milton. One of the exercises I love to do, and I do that quite seriously, is and work with our artists is when we take, for example, a children's song or something that seems something that we are used to, not pay too much attention to, and give it a different beat and begin to really take each word at a time. There is a song that we used to sing, when during the First World War in Puerto Rico, Mambrú se fue a la guerra, qué dolor, qué pena. And it was about this soldier that was going to war, and it was like a happy song about a soldier going to war. When we were doing a whole piece about Grito de Lares, the revolt of Lares, we took Mambrú and turned it into a war song in itself, by just changing the beat, by growing it, by just gave it a new set of legs. And it was an amazing process. We gave ourselves permission, as you say, Milton, to take something that's from our popular culture and just explode every moment. And believe it or not, a lot of the music we hear when we're children are really a great resource for developing big songs, taking them to the next step.
Let me just quickly, I know we have another question, but let's say hi, Elisa. And, the other thing is, I think there's a little bit of a lie going on when you listen to the radio or TV or whatever, and you hear these people and they sound so amazing and they're so produced, and then you realize that they're playing with all the buttons, and getting everybody auto-tuned and all that other stuff. They sound like we do. And actually, they're probably not as good as we are. And that's the thing to remember, I would say to you personally, Lisa, is really good. And so your little song can be a big song. And you don't need them some auto-tuning for $1 zillion. You just need to sing it.
And I would add that this is also a great time, right, to ask those people that you trust, right, those collaborators that you really connect with, and see maybe not necessarily get feedback, but just have, so that you're not just by yourself in a silo, right, trying to figure it out. But that's when it helps, right, to have other people kind of like bounce ideas back, and maybe something that they say or do inspires you. Celia asks, what would the soundtrack of your life sound like? Evelina.
Oh my God. Well, it would be very happy for sure, but after living so many years, and so much joy, especially, but also grief and loss, and in my family. I guess it would be kind of messy. It would have so many different types of music and just not have one sound, just be kind of messy. That's all. That's all I can say.
Milton, do you have a soundtrack in mind?
Well, it would sound a lot like Calle Resistencia, because I feel like I put my life in there.
Yes.
But I think that it would go everywhere. It would go up and down, and it would have some Paco de Lucia in it. It would have some Danny Rivera. It would have some Bob Marley, some Fito Páez, some Camarón de la Isla, and a bunch of pleneros. En un grupo de bomba bien nutrido.
Yeah.
Oliver, how about you?
Romantic with a sense of humor.
Oh gosh, mine goes from bolero to reggae to merengue to bomba to flamenco, and then a whole world of rap and some bluegrass, of course, in right there somewhere. Very eclectic.
Definitely. I would have a little bit of cumbia in mine too.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. And lots of protesta, lots of protesta.
Yes. Eva asks, music is so important to creating a mood, sense of place, but how do you negotiate rights to avoid intellectual property issues? Great question.
Yep. Yeah.
I'm a pirate. I steal the music, and then, people tell me I have to, obviously I want people to share the wealth, but often there's no wealth to be shared. So the point I think about music too is to share it. So you're absolutely right, of course. But I also feel, particularly when you're creating something, you ought to reach to the things that actually matter rather than some kind of generic thing, which in a lot of ways is only going to take you generally somewhere. Go to the specific great thing. And then, of course, if you're on Broadway or something, you got to figure that stuff out. But particularly in workshops and all that, just use the material, the things that really inspired you, and hopefully you can actually achieve, the business at the point when you need it.
It gets tricky.
I mean,
go ahead, Salva. I was going to say it gets
I love it.
Evelina, go. You go, Evelina, please.
It gets tricky because for me, certain songs set you in a time frame, in a mood, they evoke certain memories. I mean, and I'm not just talking about individual memories, but I'm talking about collective memories. And so it's hard. It's hard for me because I want to use the original songs, right? Many times I want to use the original songs in our work. And, we have to pay for the rights, which is only right to do, mm-hmm. right? So, and for many of my plays, I, put in a song that, reminds me of something or that speaks to something. And, then we have somebody, we pay for the licensing, and then you have somebody cover it, right? You have somebody cover it. And so that's how we've dealt with, how we've dealt with it. But most recently, Jose Luis is like, we have to use original songs. We have to use original songs because, it gets expensive to have to pay for the rights, so, mm-hmm. So I've been, writing lyrics, and my daughter just married an amazing composer, which is very convenient. So, and they've been taking my lyrics and turning them into beautiful songs, right? Yeah. And so that's kind of the direction we're going, and we're changing, but yeah, I believe that, we should pay. We have to pay. Maybe not for workshops. Maybe you're right, Oliver. Maybe if you don't have a paying audience that's going to come and see it, yeah, let's use all that stuff creatively. But once you're on the stage, doing an equity show, we have to pay for it.
Yeah, I think that our industry has some infrastructure in place that can help guide you through the process. In terms of the workshop, for example, right now, since we're ensemble and everyone contributes, precisely Monday, I'm going to be giving out the list of credits to the entire ensemble to make sure I got it right. Yes, Jose was the one who actually did the main improvisation for this one. So this composition needs to be credited to him. Where, I mean, I wrote the lyrics, but you know, the melody, how did that happen? And make sure that everyone is comfortable with the proper credit, because part of the problem with the ensemble work is the anonymity of it. You know, then if the work makes it, so there's no credit. So we were very serious about crediting everyone for the work. And of course, if we use industry music that's been recorded, we pay for the rights and what we need to do. Yeah. I think we're at time, I believe. That's all.
No, Rosalba. This is wonderful. I just wanted to check, Javi, do we have any a last question? Just checking in to make sure that. Okay, great. Oh my goodness, this has been so wonderful. Everyone who's watched, I'm sure, has learned so much from all of you. I have loved having this conversation with you. This conversation obviously will continue. The more projects we do, the more collaborations that we have with each other. I'm so happy to have been a part of this panel for Reencuentro.
Thank you, Adriana. You were great. Thank you for moderating.
Thank you. And don't miss that we have the next show coming up after this. Thank you so much, everybody.
It's Pregones show. It's
We have Ide.
We have Ide. Yay.
Go check it out.
Adios.
Okay, everybody. Thank